So I guess I'll kick it off just to welcome everybody, and thanks for joining us this morning. I guess this is something we have been, what we're trying to do. I'll start, I suppose, what we're doing here between us. So on Liz's slide there, you'll see it says GMIT iHubs, but this is actually a collaboration between 4 different innovation centres. So there's the GMIT iHubs, there's one at Galway Mayo, there's Sligo Innovation Centre, and there's the CoLab in Letterkenny. And we've all come together to try and start delivering more events together. Every month we might start doing an event. We'll try and do that. It might be every second month, depending on the topics. So what we're doing is we're reaching out to our own clients to see what's of interest, what they want to see more of, and then we'll try and deliver that between us. As I said, it's kind of handy when we're doing it virtually at the moment. It works quite well, and we don't have to travel, any of us. So that's quite good. So Jeanette is on the call, I know, as well, from Sligo. If she wants to say hello. You there, Jeanette?
Hi, hi everyone. You're all very welcome.
So hopefully you all know Jeanette.
Liz.
And
Thanks.
Patsy can't be with us today from Letterkenny. He just is he's away at the moment. And Turlock, I'm not sure if Turlock is there from Galway, just to say hello if he is going to join us yet. Michelle is here from Galway anyway as well. So just to welcome Liz, Liz Gavin, who's come all the way from your Digi village. I can never pronounce it, Liz. Down in North Cork, and Liz is going to talk to us all about European funding. So this is an area I suppose we want our own clients who are with us to explore a little bit more, to see what's available to them. So Liz is going to go through all the opportunities, or as much as she can, because I'm sure there's an awful lot that you can look at. Also to see if it's for you or not. There's a lot of work with this kind of stuff, so you have to decide that for yourself. And maybe the best way of doing this, maybe it's about having a team, and Liz will talk us through those kind of things as well. So these are kind of things, you dip your toe in the water, you see if it's for you or not. And some people are very successful at it. We've had some success, I know, with clients, and others have decided it's not for them. And there's other funding as well, just to mention that. I want to mention also Enterprise Ireland, who have given us some funding to do these events. I know Margaret Charlton has joined us on the call as well. So thanks to Margaret and the team at Enterprise Ireland for helping us to fund and do these events for the clients and people of the region who want to join us. We have hashtags as well, guys. We're going to put them, Michelle is going to put them in the chat box. So the main one is EU funding for you. And CUA Alliance is another one. So that CUA Alliance is the 3 colleges, I suppose, that are coming together as the Connacht Ulster Alliance. So this is kind of part of what we're doing. And then Liz is your Digi Village, and then we have the iHubs and Sligo and Letterkenny. So you can tweet wherever you are. You can use maybe the innovation centre that's in your region or whatever. So I'm handing it over to you, Liz. I've done enough talking. You can kick it off.
Very good. So good morning, everyone. Nice to be with you this morning. As Maria said, from North Cork here, it's sunny here, so I hope the sun is also shining where you are. I have quite a bit of information, hopefully, to impart to you this morning. So while the agenda here looks like we've 2 things and we've stopped straight away for a break, the first 2 parts are quite heavy, I suppose, in terms of information. So there's a lot in there, and I tried to be as useful as possible to startups and SMEs who'd be joining us. So from the business community, there's obviously, if there's any researchers in the audience as well, they would be familiar with some of this already, but there is some information there for researchers as well. And as you can see, I'm hoping to cover funding programs in general, just to give you an idea of what's out there. I won't be able to touch on all of them, but I will focus a bit on Horizon Europe. And Maria mentioned that Enterprise Ireland are supporting today's event, and you will see in my slides that I refer to Enterprise Ireland colleagues as well, because they provide a great support for any businesses trying to access EU funding from this side. So we'll move on then to some accelerators for startups and explaining maybe some of the ecosystem that's out there across different sectors, because often this is the kind of stuff that's hidden underneath. You probably hear about the likes of Horizon 2020 or Horizon Europe, as it is now called, but you may not hear about these other accelerators. So I'm going to put a bit of focus on those and break them down a little bit for you. We'll take a small break then at 11, and maybe just before or after the break we can take some questions on the first 2 sections. so that if you have kind of burning questions, you're welcome to put those into the chat, and Michelle or Maria will manage that, and we'll try and answer those for you. And then when we come back after the break, we'll go into what I call cascade funding, and what is called cascade funding. I'll explain what that is. It's also a source of EU funding. And I'll deal with a small bit around advice from my side relating to funding applications, very practical stuff, hopefully for you. And then I'll do a little bit of time on networking opportunities, because there is a lot of opportunities, and it's amazing how different relationships can grow and partnerships can grow, and access EU funding as a result of those networking activities. And then finally, you'll have a slide full of links to different things that I've mentioned, or sources of useful information to get you going on your journey if you decide this is something for you. And again, we'll have questions at the end, and we'll try and wrap up before 12. So that's the plan of action for the morning. I'll go straight into it. Maria, you let me know if there's any technical problems or anything. So just a small quick one on who am I and where is this business coming out of. So our business here in North Cork is a consultancy on EU and national funding opportunities. So we deal mainly with EU funding. I suppose that's our niche, but we would deal with EI funding as well, SFI funding, and that as required by clients. So the basic thing was, I suppose, I sat for 19 years as an EU official in Brussels and The Hague, and I could see how the system works. And I always wanted to come back to Ireland after working in Brussels, but one of the aims of the business is to help enable more funding to get into both Irish business, but also the research and innovation community in universities and research performing organisations. So a total of 23 years of experience, and 4 years of that now in the last 4 years as the managing director of this business. So we're a small team, we're all remote from each other, and we try to support businesses and third level with EU and national funding opportunities. We've had relatively good success for the startup phase of the business, and we've secured a total of 7.5 million so far, and we're just waiting on some new information, hopefully in the coming days, on some more results. So hopefully we'll have some success there as well. As I said before that, I lived in Brussels and The Hague, worked for 19 years for the EU, so for the European Commission originally, and then I worked for 2 EU agencies that were kind of decentralised out of the Commission, I suppose. One of those was in The Hague. It was Eurojust, so the Judicial Cooperation for Europe arm, so it'd be like a sister to Europol. Eurojust, and then secondly in the EU's first public-private partnership for aviation research and innovation, so Clean Sky. So I was the first head of administration and finance for both of those 2 agencies, and they had different budgets, all the way up to 600 million annual budget when I left in 2016. So I would have a good knowledge of the system. I would have had to build work programs, build calls, manage, decide what budgets need to be allocated to calls, manage the whole call system from inside the EU, and work with my colleagues then on allocating the grants, administrating the grants, getting the reporting in, and also auditing with the European Court of Auditors. So there's a lot of, I suppose, knowledge there, and hopefully that's something that I can help spread around together with my colleagues in the team. So moving straight into the funding programs, I've picked a few here. There are others that aren't on the slide, but just maybe in the main to mention these ones first. So you may have heard of Horizon 2020, which is the research and innovation program that just ended there in December 2020, and its successor is called Horizon Europe, and we will deal with that in a bit more detail shortly. So we'll focus on that, and at the bottom of the slide, as I said earlier, we'll also focus on cascade funding because it often gets overlooked, and it could be a nice source of some funding for businesses as well. On top of that, you have the European Structural and Investment Funds, ESIF, and those funds are made up of the 5 that you see there underneath. Some of these names are changing as we go forward into this financial framework. But in general, these are kind of funds, I suppose, that are sometimes allocated at national level, and then they are spun down to like the Southern Regional Assembly and different places across Ireland in our case. But there are funding sources there for SMEs as well, and just to make you aware of those. And you'd see things like the LIFE projects, for example, coming through some of these as well. So that's something to keep in mind as well. I just wanted to mention them because they are there. And as I said, this isn't everything, but this is a good snapshot. I have one other hidden slide there as well about things like the Connecting Europe facility and other things, and there's links to that. So when you get the slide deck, you'll be able to click on those. So we'll go into Horizon Europe, as I said. So it's the next EU Research and Innovation Programme, started in January, and the first calls will be launched on the 15th of April. So it's coming up. It's very timely to be having this information session because there's a lot of new funding sources coming on stream. So in general, I suppose the programme is aimed at researchers. It's also aimed at innovators from both basic research level all the way up to technology readiness level 9, which is close to market activities. And you can find your place in there depending on where you're at and depending on the type of business you have. I would say it's a program for innovation, really, and it's a huge program, a lot of opportunities, and the more and more, I suppose, the evolution, both in fairness of Horizon 2020 as well, was to try and have more focus on what they're calling a multi-actor approach. So they want to see both SMEs involved and also citizen engagement in the actual projects that are being funded. So there are opportunities for different entities to become involved if you have the right fit for the calls that are being announced. Some of those programs do have targets set for SME involvement, so they have to try to bring in SMEs. So you will find some groups, or what we call in EU speak consortiums, looking for SMEs in specific areas. And I have been involved myself with calls where I've had to look for SMEs to come into consortia where we would have been working with maybe a German coordinated fund, for example, or project application, and they needed Irish SMEs. So that's the kind of, I suppose, matchmaking and joining the dots that we would try to do as well. So the total budget of this programme for this period now is 95.5 billion. In the words of Maria Gabriel, who's the Commissioner for Research and Innovation, she says that it's the most ambitious transnational research and innovation programme in the world. So there was a launch event which Enterprise Ireland hosted there last week or the week before. It's available on the internet if you need to go back through it, and it goes through quite well the different aspects of the programme, and you have some context as well around the different areas. So as I said, the first call will open on the 15th of April, and the first sets of deadlines, some are closing on the 8th of September, some are closing on the 23rd, and it just depends on your call topic and what's being requested. But just so you have an idea, that's kind of the timeline they usually have for these calls. So if we look at Horizon Europe from a helicopter, this is what I suppose it looks like in terms of the structure and how it's set up. So it's composed of 3 pillars, and then down at the bottom there you have a kind of horizontal principle or priority, which is widening participation and strengthening the EU research area. And in general, for Pillar 1, with just under 25 billion euros, I suppose this is the main home of researchers to find research grants for more basic level research. So there are a lot of opportunities in there, and I suppose researchers in our universities and RPOs would be familiar with this area. For the audience today, I'm going to concentrate mainly on Pillar 2 and Pillar 3. And in particular in Pillar 2 on the clusters. So there are 6 clusters, what they call the cluster areas. And we'll go through those shortly now, a total of 52.8 billion. And then in Pillar 3, we will find the European Innovation Council and the European Institute of Innovation and Technology, the EIT. And they're very interesting as well for startups and for highly innovative businesses. So we'll go through those quite detailed. So just to, I suppose, highlight that they're the 2 places, I suppose, the audience, from what I know of the audience today, that's where you would be looking at Horizon Europe for opportunities. I just wanted to mention then as well, so there was a new idea coming for this program, which is centered on the idea of missions. So these are horizontal streams of work and research and innovation that they want to progress. So one of the missions, for example, is to solve the issue of cancer and make sure that we can fight cancer in a better way than we can today. And so there will be a lot of money being focused through the pillars we've just looked at across these 5 missions. Now, some of the missions are still being finalized in terms of what exactly, you know, the cutoff point or how far they think they want to go on them. So it is still a little bit evolving in most of the cases. So if you want to read up more about those general missions, I suppose the reason I'm mentioning it is because it gives you the context of the overall scheme of where these things are coming from. And when you're writing an application, it's important to know that, but I'll get onto that later on about some funding application writing tips. So that's when you hear about the EU missions, these are the, I suppose, the areas that they want to cover. So we'll go on now to the clusters. The clusters overview here. We have 6 of them, as I mentioned. So hopefully you can find your place within these 6. And I suppose that would be interesting for you to understand where is your home within these clusters if you're interested in this area. So I'll go through them quickly. So what I've done here is just taken the destinations, what they are calling destinations within each of these clusters, to cover different aspects. And from these destinations, there will be calls for funding. So they'll be looking for projects to fulfill these higher level, I suppose, objectives. So I won't read them all out, but as you can see here, for example, in number 3 there would be a lot of funding now, obviously for COVID related stuff, but other stuff as well, the Ebola, different disease burdens that the EU is facing and the world is facing, that they continue to fund in there. And then there would be, I suppose, we would come across a lot of, and I know up there in the West, you have a lot of med tech, medical device companies and startups that are highly innovative and breakthrough. And I suppose number 5 there would be a place where some of those would find their home. And, you know, anything to do with digital health, e-health solutions as well would find their home in there. So it is worth, you know, digging down underneath these destinations to see what are the calls within them each time there's a new call announced. And it's interesting as well to read, you know, the whole background of each of those destinations where you find your place. What is the overlapping, I suppose, and overarching objectives of those destinations. So it's important to understand that, so you understand then where your topic comes. And when I talk about a topic, that's a specific ask from the EU to solve a specific problem, and that's where we apply into specific projects with specific ideas how to solve it through the projects and through the application process. So in cluster 2 then, culture, creativity and inclusive society, there's a lot of work going to take place around democracy and governance, and this I suppose is in somehow a response to the last number of years where the EU's state of democracy, I suppose, has been under some pressure, and there's some work and funding available for supports there. And then you have the European cultural heritage and culture and creative industries. And this is all things from, filmmaking, arts, music, all kinds of museums, digital museums, virtual tours, all that kind of thing. You could find anything in there. It's a very interesting area. We've been involved in some projects there as well. And then social and economic transformations can be around urban or rural transformations relating to different developments. So again, it's a mixed bag, worth having a look in case you're in those kind of areas. I'll move on to cluster 3. So here we have civil security and society. So one of my own former employers was DG Justice in the European Commission, and we would have worked on things like the Schengen Information System, the European Refugee Fund and things like that. So obviously, there's a lot of different challenges facing the EU in terms of migration, in terms of terrorism, in terms of cybersecurity. And all of this area is about building solutions and providing progress for the EU society to be able to deal with these different threats and different evolving situations. So this is a place, I suppose, where people in this area can find their place. And there would be things relating to technology advances here as well. So, better drones for surveillance, different judicial means as well to solve different crimes, and that they would all find their home here. And again, it's worth a dig through if you're in that area. So then we're into cluster 4. Very exciting space as well, the digital industry and space. And there would be home here for emerging technologies. And again, most of these would be on a consortium basis. So you would have to partner with other countries to apply into these generally. Now, there will be some calls where there may be, one participant can go in on their own as well. It just depends on the area and it depends on what the ask is. But here it's all around, as you can see, digital advancement, virtual solutions, and helping industry, I suppose, evolve and be more resilient in the future in general. A lot of this stuff would have been on the table before COVID hit, so they would have had a lot of these ideas thought through before COVID came along, but they have evolved then to take into account, I suppose, the pandemic and how obviously, working from home, the way society has evolved in the last 12 months in particular, they'd be still looking for solutions to help speed up, answers to some of the questions that we've all had to face over the last while. So you'll find pieces of that in there as well. And again, as I say, it's important to dig underneath these and see what kind of calls would be relevant for your area. So then in cluster 5, we've only cluster 5 and 6 now. So on the second last one, everything relating to climate, energy, so energy efficiency, competitive energy supply, sustainable energy, all of that is in here. And we would be approached, I suppose, by different companies providing different solutions. And depending on the area, some of those are relating to, climate change, energy, energy supply and that. And there can be interesting collaborations with EU partners here in this area. So again, I would encourage anybody working in that area to have a look. The clean and competitive solutions for all transport modes would be applying to aviation, to trains, to marine transport, road infrastructure, and anything to do with, I suppose, more competitive solutions. There is the overarching theme. So as you can see, it covers all different kinds of sectors in terms of transport modes. And it's all around innovation here, and also linking up EU infrastructures. So there are specific joint undertakings, for example, for rail, and as I said, for aviation, and they would have their own calls, but these calls here would be in the overarching side of things, and there can be interesting calls for proposals there as well. Finally, we would find, I suppose this is the home of a lot of our own agriculture research, bioeconomy progress. I suppose we would work very closely with bioeconomy actors ourselves here in our business, and the whole struggle to have a more efficient ecosystem in terms of circular economy and bioeconomy. This is the place where you'll find calls for proposals to further those. You have the food systems approach, so food security, soil health, all of that would be in here. And then blue economy solutions. So if you're working with blue economy, in the blue economy sector, this is probably your home as well, to have a look at, to see is there something in here that could be for you. And it may not be in the first call or the second call, it may be a few calls away, but the more you familiarize yourself with these sources, I suppose, the better it is for yourself. I wanted to just draw your attention then to some partnerships. Sorry for my spelling, I just spotted it there now. So as I mentioned before coming back to Ireland, I worked in Clean Sky, and that was a partnership as well. So that was for the aviation sector. And these partnerships I put on the screen here are relating to industries. And again, these sometimes, in the main, people don't realize these things exist. And in particular, these three are all new. So it is important for those of you maybe working in the manufacturing side or trying to support the manufacturing side, for example, to have a look at some of these partnerships, because they will have their own funding stream. And they do have specific targets for SME participation. So on an annual basis, they try to hit, certain targets. And in my time, it was about 16–17% had to be SMEs included in the funding awarded. So, they are looking for SMEs to come forward and to bring their solutions or to get involved with others to upscale and build solutions. So I suppose why I have a particular grow for these is because what I found in working in Clean Sky, we had a nice, I suppose, a smaller community of like-minded partners who started to get to know each other over the years of the programme. And while you mightn't succeed, or you mightn't even have an opportunity in the first call to go for something, over time, the community of businesses in here and researchers get to know about your business and get to know what you're good at and what you could potentially deliver. And that helps to build a future funding application in time, which you know, it's not always just about the funding from the EU, but it's also about the commercial opportunities that can happen out of those. And when preparing today's presentation, I was speaking to Maria, and I mentioned, for example, Era Composites, which would be a Galway-based business. And in my time working at Clean Sky, you know, Era Composites came in very early on in the time, and you know, wouldn't have had a lot of experience with working with EU funding, and they bided their time and worked really hard, and had one or two unsuccessful attempts as well, of course, at the start, but they've had such fantastic commercial success out of their EU funding partnerships and relationships that they have grown. And there are plenty of other examples, I'm sure, that you were aware of from the press as well, which can show what you know, EU funding itself can do, but also the community, I suppose, around it, and what that can open up for your business. So even if you were never to receive a euro, there are opportunities here to find like-minded people, but also other industries that you could potentially service or tie into. So that's something I would like to get across as a message today. Okay, so we're just 25 to 11. I'll move on to the accelerators now. So that's all I'm doing on Horizon Europe. Just to say, first of all, I'll give you links later on in the presentation to the portal where you can go to find the funding sources. And that's a whole other, I suppose, training to show you how it works, and you click in and see how the call is set up. And they, as I said, would be launching on the 15th of April. And then there's a whole scheme of how you would find partners in there, and in fairness, the portal helps you to do that. And you know, there's plenty of help out there, I suppose, through Enterprise Ireland, as I mentioned, through the European Enterprise Network, and I'll link in those later on in the slides to apply into this funding. So I'll come back to that a bit later on. Okay, so we'll move on to the accelerators for startups, and I suppose in the first few slides here, I'm going to focus on the first three. So the EIC Accelerator, the Pathfinder, and the Transition. And these are all funding streams available to single SMEs who are, as the slide says here, highly disruptive, innovative, and breakthrough. And I'm quite pedantic about saying that, because it's a waste of your time if you haven't got something very, very disruptive for the EIC funding sources. We've had quite nice success in Ireland applying into this. We've kind of punched above our weight in terms of the EU average here, but it has gotten so competitive in the last number of years. And it's definitely something that you know, you should use both Enterprise Ireland support and, of course, I'm going to say it, consultant support to help you apply in here, because it is quite technical, but the rewards are great. As you can see, the funding there available is from €500,000 up to €2.5 million grant, and then there is a possibility to have equity also up to €15 million. You don't have to go for the equity option, you can just apply for a grant. But I suppose more and more companies are letting, you know, themselves go into the EU stream to be in front of private investors who have signed up to help fund EIC Accelerator beneficiaries. So I've put up details of an Enterprise Ireland launch event for this. It's on the 20th of April, so you can click into it afterwards. And anyway, if you Google it, you'll find it. But that's an interesting webinar, I suppose, to go into more detail around this one. But on the next slide, I have a small little bit here about the application process. So maybe just a little bit of history here first. This EIC Accelerator used to be called the SME instrument, and it used to have two stages or two phases of funding. Phase one was a €50,000 €500,000 fund, and phase 2 was the current £500,000 to £2.5 million. The reason I'm telling you all of this is because the old application, and when it evolved to EIC Accelerator, if we talk about the bigger fund, the up to £2.5 million, that was a 30-page document with a lot of technical information requested and commercial information, financial projections, quite a detailed application form. And it had to be of a really, really high standard to get funded. Well, the idea itself in the first place has to be really innovative and breakthrough to be even considered, and then your application needs to be really perfect. A very, very competitive, but they have changed all of that, and now this new process starting now is changed so that, and I suppose the history as well is with the 30-page application, you could apply as many times as you wanted. You could resubmit and resubmit. There was no problem, and they would keep evaluating. And I suppose the system got overflown with, overloaded with applications, and they've changed the application format now. So the first application is a short, what they call a short application. So it's a 5-page form where, as it says here, you summarize the proposal and you respond to a certain set of questions. You talk about market potential and you give an overview of the team that's going to deliver the innovation. You also have to submit a pitch deck of up to 10 slides following the format set by the EIC. And furthermore, a video pitch of up to 3 minutes. Now, this can be submitted anytime and will be evaluated as they arrive. If you pass that stage, so you've invested now 5-page form, a pitch deck and a video, you will be then invited to submit the longer application, which is close to the I think between 20 and 30 pages. And the first deadline for that is the 9th of June this year. So if you are interested in this, it is something you need to start applying into immediately to get through that first page in order or the first stage in order for them to turn it around, and you have time to get the feedback that you're successful, that you can go through to second stage and then be back in and submitted by the 9th of June. So if you are interested in that, I would say to get your skates on as quickly as possible so that you have a chance. Now, another kind of caveat there, I suppose, I'll come to the last 2 bullets in a moment. The other caveat is to know that the last deadline for this was in October. So there is a small, well, there's a big gap in the opportunity for companies to apply into it. So my opinion is that there will be a lot of companies applying for the 9th of June, by the 9th of June deadline if they pass the first stage. And if you're not ready, and if you're, doing it all very quickly, I know everybody wants funding yesterday, I would be suggesting maybe to take more time and to wait for the following deadline, which is in October. It just, you have to think about how you're investing your own time as well, and what are the outcomes or the outputs from it. So just to be careful on it. It's everyone can decide for themselves, but that's just a piece of information, I suppose, the background. If you get past the submission of the second one, then you're invited for an interview. This would have been part of the old process as well. A face-to-face interview with the EIC jury, and if you pass through that, if you're selected for funding, then you would be invited to finalise the contract for the grant agreement, and there would be a due diligence performed on the for the investment component, if that's the path you decide to follow. So there's a lot to think about there. But like, we've had good success, and it has been a very good funding source for highly disruptive SMEs here in Ireland. So it is certainly something to think about. I do have another slide on this. It's actually, I'm after hiding it. I'll bring it up just after the break just to show you. I had another one on the EIC Pathfinder and transition. Maybe I'll just, there it is. I'll just, sorry now. Okay, sorry about that. I thought I had it unhidden. So as you can see here, this is a little bit more detail about the accelerator is the one down here at the bottom that I've just spoken to you about. So the next deadline is the 6th of October for that one. And then for the Pathfinder and the EIC transition, there are different grant amounts. And here you do need, in the example of the Pathfinder, for example, you do need at least 3 different independent legal entities from 3 different eligible countries. And you do, generally that would be EU member states, but there are some associated countries to the programme as well. There are specific call, I suppose, challenges that are underway here and that are being requested to be answered. So you do need to have a look at those, and if you're interested, the deadline for that one is the 19th of May. But as I say, you do need 2 other member state entities to be involved with you. So we would have had examples, I suppose, in the past through the old Fast Track to Innovation Fund, where, you know, an Irish, for example, medtech company would use a research, organise a clinical research, clinical trials organisation in another country, and then maybe a hospital as well to be the third partner. So things, you know, it depends on the construction and what your project is about, but there are different different nodes of the supply chain, I suppose, or of the solution that could be involved to go for these grants. The call deadline there is the 19th of May. And that's for the open call. So you can see these are the open call deadlines. And then they have specific challenge driven calls as well, where they are asking for specific things to be answered. And they have their own deadlines. So in the EIC Accelerator, the one I mentioned, it has both open call and challenge driven calls as well. And the deadlines are the same for both in that case. But they're the same for the EIC transition. So in the EIC transition, then again, it's a specific grant of up to 2.5 million to validate and demonstrate technology in a relevant environment. So it's specific for TRL 4 to 5 and 6, and that would be coming out of the lab and coming into an operational environment to look at how the innovation performs in a real environment. And again, you'll get more information on that on the EIC website, and I've links to it, and we can provide more advice to you around those if you're interested. So it is open to single applicants or small consortia, and in this case the applications must be based on results from eligible Pathfinder. These are Future and Emerging Technologies Funds, or ERC, that's the European Research Council Proof of Concept project. So that's a very specific one. You probably have gone through a different path to get through to that transition funding, I suppose, for most of you today, and that's why I focused on it. I suppose the accelerator is the one that's closest to you if you're highly innovative. But for anyone who's interested in the other two and understanding a bit more, if they could apply into those, you're welcome to contact us, and we can give you some more advice around that. Okay, so we will move on now to EIT Health and EIT Climate Kick. And I wanted to spend a little bit of time on these, as I say, because they kind of sometimes get forgotten about or not realize. People don't realize these things exist. So EIT stands for the European Institute of Innovation and Technology. And it is, I suppose, the EU's attempt at having a innovation community for different sectors in one place. So the model that the different sectors apply is similar. And you will see that depending on your sector, there's probably one for you within EIT. So these are just some statistics from their own website. I pulled this from their website. But the idea, I suppose, here is they have funding programs, and they would be from anything from 20,000 euros all the way up to 2-3 million euro. Sometimes you need private partners in there with you. Sometimes you need, in EIT Health, for example, you need health partners who have, large multinationals who are already obviously well established, who they want you to partner with, which is in your interest. It just depends on the different programs. So they have funding programs. They also have boot camps, accelerator programs. They have coaching and mentoring services. They have different workshops. I'm bringing it to your attention, I suppose, because it's another source of information, potentially funding, networking for your business to find a good pathway in. And there are plenty of European SMEs getting funding from this source and following their path through here. And there's no reason why Irish entities can't do the same. So there are some challenges or some areas, I suppose, that they are working on, and I will focus today on the climate one and on the health one, but I wanted to just bring the other ones to your attention as well. So I won't spend time on climate and health now, but if you just look at the other four, there is a specific one for driving the digital transformation in Europe. EIT Digital, there is one on food, innovation and production. So if you have a highly innovative idea for food and alternative foods, this is your potentially a good home. And again, it's about a community around you to support your idea. There is another one on the raw materials, as it says there, and then innovation energy for a more sustainable energy future. So when we looked at the high, I suppose, the overarching clusters, that's a whole other funding program. But EIT is also trying to service some of those challenges. So this is just another pathway into EU funding or supports that I wanted to bring to your attention, that you may not otherwise realise exists if you only look at Horizon Europe, for example. So do have, if any of these are on your radar, have a drill down onto the EIT website and go in and see what can you get in there. So if I just go focus a little bit more on EIT Health, so they have there's loads of different programs. I couldn't even try to put them up here. What I did try to do was put up the kind of sectors, I suppose, that they're working in terms of innovation projects. And again, this is just a snapshot from their website, but these are the different areas that they're working in terms of innovation around the area of health. As I said, there's supports for different aspects of the business, whether it's funding, mentoring. They have these like 2-day camps where you'd attempt, you'd try and solve a problem. The problem of, obviously the problem your business is interested in, but with like-minded people around the table to help you, and you're helping them, and there are experts there as well. So there's some nice, I suppose, supports available there, and I have a link to the information on the slide as well. And for Ireland and the UK, then so the EIT, sorry, just on the EIT Health again, Ireland and the UK is seen as one region in terms of being able to service the startups and SMEs who need supports. So you would link into the EIT Health regional source of contact if you're interested in joining any of their programs or trying to apply into them. And they also give you access directly to private investment as well. So again, they would help you to prepare for that. And there's a whole, I suppose, myriad of supports there. So I have seen, you know, again, Galway-based and in the West-based companies going through this and getting some of the smaller grants to keep them going at the start, or to get an idea, get more funding for an idea. So just not to overlook it, I suppose, is the message, and to think about it. And this is reflected across the other sectors then in EIT as well. If we focus then on just the climate KIC, so it's KIC stands for Knowledge and Information Community, or Innovation, sorry, Knowledge and Innovation Community. And in particular for climate, they're focusing on cities, sustainable production systems, as you can see here. I don't need to name them out. But again, it's supporting startups in both low carbon technology and sustainable finance. And I have actually, again, I've given one of these info sessions into the Climate KIC group in the past, and really innovative ideas around climate solutions, whether that's in sustainable building solutions. It just depends on the different areas, but this is a really nice accelerator to be part of, and we have a Dublin office, I suppose, that is supporting this programme. Sustainable Nation Ireland are in charge of this at the moment, so they would roll out the accelerator here for us, and it's been a very good source for companies involved in circular manufacturing, circular production systems, and all of that kind of thing. So, you know, if that is your area, it's another one to think about. I just pull this out just to show you an example of how these accelerator programs are working. So again, in the first stage, finding your market niche, develop a financial model and figure out how to make money and scale your business. The grant available here is 20,000 or 10,000, depending on which scheme you're in. So there would be the basic thing about, you know, how your business is set up and what market it's addressing, etc. And then validation of whether, you know, the idea is actually answering your customers' problems. There is another grant available there. Grants in stage 2 are meant to cover travel costs and could be up to 25,000 euros. And this is because they also involve some, at least before COVID, they did involve some travel to other countries to look at what, you know, how other businesses were being set up and any innovation around your particular area. They would fund your kind of research around that. And getting more advice and support for the business. And then the third stage there is a grant worth up to 50,000, find launching customers, developing partners, or preparing for investors. So, you know, they're not bad programs to keep an eye on if it's your area. And as I say, I'm only dealing with these two here, but each of them will have similar programs. And this is definitely in the example of health. They have loads of different ones. There must be 8 to 10 different programs. And I know the Climate Kick has different ones as well, but maybe not as many. But again, just keep an eye on it if it's interesting for you. We're just coming up to 11, Maria. So I don't know if people have a question now. They're welcome to ask it before we break at 11.
There's a few, Liz, there in the chat box. I know that Margaret asked there when you mentioned the EIT health. Well, I think it was health. She asked about, is that the case with Brexit? You mentioned about the UK, Ireland, and the UK. Is it still the case? She's wondering.
As far as yes, according to the website, and I suppose the EU or the UK has signed up to be an associated country for certain Horizon Europe activities, and EIT seems to be still in there according to the website. I did check that, yeah.
The other thing is, Niamh Costello mentioned the creative and cultural industries. There's another one EIT are launching on the 21st of April for everybody, just to be aware of it. She put the link in as well. And Margaret, yeah, go ahead, Liz.
No, I was going to say I have a link later on to the horizoneurope.ie website, and in fairness, and I'm not saying it because Enterprise Ireland are on the call, but there are events up there now that, you know, it's really trying to help people. There's loads of help out there. So do try to follow those webinars and get the information, because it will help the funding application process to no end. You know, it's really important to do that.
A question, there's another question coming in there, but Margaret just asked the specific challenges in the EIC calls. Can you speak a little bit more about these, in particular the EIC Accelerator one?
Okay. So the challenges in the EIC Accelerator, from my own experience, we would have helped a number of businesses applying into them. Look, they're highly competitive, so you can have a really, really good idea and a really good application and still obviously not get funded. The challenge, what we have seen, is describing your innovation really well in a concise way. That's understandable to a non-expert, but also at the right level of maturity in terms of technical excellence, because they will look for technical excellence in the proposal. The other thing is the commercialization plan needs to be well thought through. Your market needs to be well checked, and all your research done properly around it. It needs to be credibly linked into your commercialization plan, in terms of whether that's launching in Europe first or the US first, which is more practical or realistic and advisable for the type of business you're in and the sector you're in. The team to deliver the innovation needs to be the right one. So they want to see a kind of track record of the individuals involved. What have they done before? How credible are they to be able to deliver this? They would be the main things. The writing needs to be very concise, no hot air in there, no extra sentences that don't add anything. Your executive summary needs to be very sharp, very to the point. Get your message across, explain what your innovation is about, what problem it's solving. I mean, these are all the usual things, I suppose, that we see in these business funding applications. But in the case of EIC Accelerator, it's really, really important. The other element would have been the technology readiness level, to explain that in detail and to explain how you got to where you're at and where you're going to go with the money and what you're going to use the money for. So it's fine to ask for these big amounts, but you need to have a very credible plan of how you're going to spend it and why the figures that you're putting in there are credible. So the work packages, you have to have 5 or 6 work packages defined to show how that money is going to be spent. So that's very important. And the whole impact as well of your innovation is important. And in the new calls, there is going to be more of a focus on the gender element in both the team, but also in the solution that you're providing, that it has taken into account gender elements and anything to do with green and sustainable solutions. That will certainly, there are specific calls asking relation to green technologies and green solutions, and the merits of that and how your claims stand up will be examined carefully. So it's a quite a difficult process, but the rewards are very good.
Thanks, Liz. I know you probably could go on all day listing stuff, and it's similar applying for lots of the bigger funds here as well. Like you list out team and all that kind of stuff, and it's very similar. So I guess, and there's people there as well, just to mention that help you prepare, like Liz and I know Helena is on the call here today as well. There are people that do those applications and help you with them. Owen has a question here. If you fall into two different clusters for funding, can you find out which one would be less competitive? That is, which one would be best to apply for?
Yeah, so I suppose each of the clusters, so in the work programs that are coming out now, they will show the call topic, the value per call topic. So for example, a call topic might have a budget of 15 million, and they say they're going to fund 3 projects. So and sometimes they will say, so we're expecting projects in the ballpark, but they don't use that word, but in the region of 5 million euros per project. But submissions above or below that amount are also fine or are welcome. So you'll have an idea, first of all, of the amount of funding for your particular topic, and then depending on the total envelope for the call, you will see how big or small the budget you have is in relation to the other budgets. But really, so that's one. So you can compare that with the other cluster. But it's really only when the applications are gone in that we would know what your chance of success is, because then we obviously see how many have applied to each different one. But you can go back in history a little bit, I suppose, and for that area you could see, are there hundreds applying each time to this kind of area, or is it smaller numbers, because sometimes they only get 2 or 3, and sometimes, at least in my experience in Clean Sky, we got no applications for some topics, which is also kind of incredible, but it does happen. So you could do a little bit of history checking, I suppose, to see what kind of numbers were applying in the past and what kind of entities are involved as well. That's interesting to know.
Okay, Liz. Another question. Huey said, is there match funding for the grants, and if so, at what percentage?
So depending on the grant, in Horizon Europe, it's generally 70 to 80% is funded, and you have to come up with the other 20 or 30% depending on the fund. But generally, that's the kind of funding scheme. I have a slide later on about, when you get paid and how the process works a little bit, just from a very quick practical point of view, so we can go through that, but it depends on the scheme. In the case of the accelerator, it's 70%. It used to be 70% at least, and I think it's going to stay at that.
And one last question, is Clean Sky still around? It's just a question that came in there.
Clean Sky is still around, but probably not going to be called Clean Sky in the future. It's changing name again. So it was Clean Sky, then it was Clean Sky 2. And as far as I know, they're changing the name of it for this next set of the next financial framework.
Great. Liz, there might be another 1 or 2 questions. I'm conscious that we said we'd take a break if people want to go to the toilet or get a cup of coffee, and we'll come back. If there's a question or 2, I'll send them to you and we can answer them anyway, maybe later on or whatever. Yeah.
Okay.
So if everybody wants to take 5 minutes, we'll be back again. We'll say 11:10. We'll kick off. Is that okay, or?
Okay.
Or just maybe 12 minutes. We'll give the 5 minutes. Yeah.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay. See you all then. Hi, Michelle.
Hi.
I'm not sure if Liz is back yet. I presume she's not.
Give her a second. Yeah.
Now, Michelle, we let you, if Liz is back.
I am back, yeah.
So we let Michelle just do her, the picture thing, if everybody, I'll let Michelle introduce it and just say what she's doing so people are aware.
Hi, how are you? Yes, so we're just going to take a group photo if that's okay. So we'd invite as many of you as possible if you wish to turn on your camera. And it's totally fine if you want to opt out. We would ask that you leave your camera turned off. So I'll take 2 group shots if you just give me a moment. I see everyone is turning them on. That's great. It's just loading here on my side.
Nice to see everybody.
Yeah, it's great. Okay, bear with me now 1 moment. Super, so I'll count it down. So 3, 2, 1. And I'll take 1 more in a second.
We'll be famous before the day is out.
We'll go viral, as they say.
I'm looking at who's got the messiest office. I think I'm probably one of those.
Okay, so we'll go again.
I'm trying to get my background.
Oh, you want to get your background, Margaret?
Doesn't matter, doesn't matter.
Okay, so we'll go again. We'll go 3, 2, 1. Smiles. Perfect. Okay, that's great. Thanks very much, everybody.
Thanks, Michelle. So we'll hand it back to Liz again. Liz, you're on. There was a question I missed there, Liz, and I put it up. Just are all of these sources now fixed, or are there still time to influence some of these? This was at the very beginning. That was a question. Is there any time to influence some of these work programs? That was the very first or second slide, I think. If you don't know, you can look at, you can answer it again.
No, I mean, I'll answer there. I suppose, look, the work programs each year, they come out each year, and but the not the problem, but there's a long lead time with them. So if you want to change, you can change obviously the ones that are coming out now, but if you want to talk to the national contact point based in Enterprise Ireland, or talk to you know, people who are responsible for that in the European Commission, you can certainly try to do so. But I suppose there was a consultation process that has taken place, and they've taken a lot of that into account until now. But I mean, we absolutely have seen calls changing or being, you know, updated with new input over time as these programs roll out, because things do change, and you know, learnings lead to new things emerging. So I would never say the door is closed completely, but obviously for a call that's coming out in a few days or even in a few months, it takes such a long time to get it into the machine in Brussels. It's hard to retrieve it. But for example, for next year's calls or the year after calls, you know, now is a good time to start talking and trying to see if there's a way of influencing that. And sometimes the answer is yes, and sometimes the answer is no. It just depends on what you have in mind. Okay, I will keep going. So we're just gone quarter past. Okay. I'm bringing your attention now, I suppose, to cascade funding. So this is another funding source which is coming out of a previously advertised call for proposals. So when we looked earlier on, for example, at the clusters, let's say that in the agriculture area, I'm going to keep on agriculture here for a second, because I'm going to come with an agri-tech cascade fund in a moment. So in the agriculture area, they may have asked for technical solutions in the area of robotics for the agriculture sector. And they had, you know, it was much more specific than that now, the call, and different EU consortia would have applied. And in the case I'm going to show you, and it's just an example, the winning consortium then receives, let's say, between 4 and 6 million euro in total for everybody on the consortium. And in these consortia, they can be from 5-6 entities up to 35-36 entities and more sometimes. And each of them are getting a part of that funding then to deliver the piece of work that they have promised to deliver into the project for the progress on the project. So in the example I'm going to give you, there was a funding call for agri-tech solutions in the area of robotics, and the winning consortium got funded. But part of the call request was to also open further calls as a consortium to get new innovations in, or every innovation is new, but new ideas in to further the impact of the call and to reach more SMEs and startups who are working, in this case, in the area of robotics in agri-tech. So the typical funds can be, so they would then open a call themselves, so like a mini call. So it doesn't go all the way to Brussels, but it stays within the consortium. There are terms and conditions on that. There's a timetable. There's a shorter funding window or application window. And then they could say there's from 5,000 per project or 5,000 per entity, up to, I have seen, 500,000 per project within these open calls. So the open call itself may be worth 2 million, for example, in total, and they might allocate to 4 projects 500,000, for example. So you can apply in, depending on what these cascade calls request, you can apply in as a single entity, and I will give you an example in a moment why I'm talking about this, or multiple entities. So sometimes they say you do need to reach out to another EU member state, you need to, partner with another member state entity, or you need to have 2 other entities in 2 member states. It just depends. That's where the one node or a few nodes together. So you might be the technology provider, you may need a user in France, and you may need a manufacturer in Italy. I'm just making it up. But they're the kind of, I suppose, arrangements that can happen. There are specific objectives again for these calls and specific technology readiness levels that they would ask for in these cascade calls. And sometimes they just fit very, very well with the stage of development that some of you may be at. That's why I'm highlighting them, because they're a little bit hidden. You'd never find it in the Horizon 2020 call, because that's for, Horizon Europe call, because that's for bigger consortia going for the bigger funds. But within that, then there may be funding opportunities, and it's important to keep an eye out for those. And I suppose the good thing is there's much shorter timeframes involved and less burdensome application and evaluation processes in general here. So the example that I would suggest that you kind of Google a little bit maybe later on, or just to understand, is the Agrobo Food Project. So this is coming out of what used to be TSSG in Waterford, which is now the Walton Institute. And I put a link up to the website there, but I've also just pulled up the second open call is currently ongoing, and the process and criteria for that are here. So this is just an example of a cascade funding. So they have, in this case, a total amount to be granted out of the cascade call of 2.65 million. You can see that the amount per project is between 300,000 and 500,000 euros. Budget per partner is between 50 and 300,000, and number of partners 2 to 5 partners. And they imagine they will fund plus or minus 6 projects. So they've opened it on the 1st of March, closing 31st of May, and they give you the timetable then. So they're hoping they'll be signing contracts end of August, and the actual projects would start in September, going all the way until January 2023 in this case. So it was just to bring your attention to this kind of opportunity as well, because again, depending on the information is power, and if you have the information, you can be successful in these. So we would have helped a number, I suppose, of SMEs, startups and established businesses applying into these kind of funds. And I remember one client telling me, and he got in one example, he got 60,000 euros through this for his business. But it was to further the technology progress of the solution he has. And he did tell me that, like, he was kind of falling between stools. He was falling a little bit between Leo and Enterprise Ireland, just as it happened to be at the time. And this fund came along, and now he did have to partner with a French company, but he had already needed that French company anyway because he couldn't find the expertise in Ireland. So it suited him perfectly. And he got this 60k. It kept the thing moving until he was later able to apply to actually Enterprise Ireland again for the Disruptive Technologies Innovation Fund. And he got 1.8 million with the other 2 partners on the project to further their commercial solution. And that's ongoing at the moment. But it just shows you, I suppose, that there are these little opportunities out there as well. They may not be the millions that you would love to get yesterday, but they can be nice bridging solutions. And not only that, they build your community, they build your network of people operating in the area, companies that you should be tying in with, researchers that you should be tying in with if it's the case. And there's EU funding support there. And generally these are 80 to 100% funded. It just depends on the call. It depends on the criteria, but generally they're quite, the funding rate is quite high in them. So just to think about that.
Where sorry, then somebody asked
Yeah.
the question, where can you find all of the Cascade calls?
There is no one place you can find them, unfortunately, Maria. It's a question of like, you know, that's the kind of thing we would be trying to put out on social media as soon as we see them. We try to put them up and link them in. The different universities and RPOs would know of some of them because they would be involved in them. It's a question of keeping an eye on your area and following, you know, the main actors on it on Twitter, on their own websites, and it comes up that way. So that's, yeah, unfortunately, there's no one-stop shop where you can find every open Cascade call, unfortunately. Okay, so the funding routes and opportunities, I suppose, this is just a little bit of advice from my point of view, both from my time in Brussels, but also from sitting on this side of the table here in Ireland. So I would say that for any of you thinking of going for EU funding, you know, as you can see, it's not an easy thing, but there are nice rewards there, and it can be very useful for your business. So the first thing would be to consider the stage of development of your business. Are you at the right stage for the opportunities that you're thinking of going for? Is it the right fit for your business? I'm always saying to people, you know, obviously don't go for funding just for the sake of going for funding. It really does need to fit into your overall plan and the overall strategy of the business. And is it adding value to the business? Is it worth the effort? Both in terms of the application, but also even afterwards when you do get funded, the effort that is needed to deliver what you've promised on the project, to make sure that it's tying in with your own business development. So understand the options that are out there, make sure you understand what it means to be involved in one of these projects, either as a single entity or with others. And I put in the third bullet there, play the short and the long game. So some of these, you know, you won't get the output from them for months, or for maybe a year or two. Like we've had clients who've come to us, as I say, like very early on in the time back in 2017, and maybe it has taken them 2 years to get to the end of the process and get a grant into their hands. But in the meantime, they have certainly, you know, developed relationships, understood the area they're playing in much better, understood what opportunities are out there. Some of those are quick wins, you know, in terms of getting insight into a market or into the technology that they're developing and what's happening at EU level, what the EU work programs are looking for in terms of innovation development. That's important as well. And then with the longer game, I suppose that's also in terms of partnering with maybe RPOs or, you know, technology experts to deliver your solution, and to have the right EU partners as well, for the right project proposals. As I've said earlier, it's important to network and speak to your own national contact points early on. So for each of those clusters that I mentioned earlier on, there are national contact points in Enterprise Ireland who can help you to navigate your way through the call and understand if the topic is a good fit for your business, or the consortium that you're being invited into or that you want to get involved in, for example. Also speaking to researchers in your area is interesting because they will be aware of some funding pathways that they may have explored or that may be useful for you to partner together on. So sometimes researchers are looking for companies to actually roll out some of the solutions or to test some of the research they've done through their solution, through your SME solution. So it just depends on the area you're in, but they're definitely worth talking to if it's something that you're not fully up to date with already. There's usually a knowledge there, and they, you know, the research and innovation that's happening across Ireland is immense, and we have huge talent, and I suppose it's the transferring of that knowledge onto business and commercialization of it that is really the challenge we all have, to make sure that we're getting the best out of these funds. So even if your business isn't highly innovative at the moment, there may be researchers working around your business area or your sector area that want to roll out an innovation, but you know, don't have the means to do so, and they need partners. So it just depends on your sector. And I would also encourage you, and I know that the different hubs there, Sligo, Letterkenny and GMIT, have all got access to successful EU funding awardees, and they would, you know, put you in contact with them to understand their journey, to understand the pitfalls, to understand what was involved, and get it from the horse's mouth as such. I know, Maria, you have contacts that you're quite happy to maybe put in people's hands to speak to about these awards that they have gotten from EU funding.
Yeah, and we can share some names from the various colleges as well after. Yeah.
Great. Okay. So how to apply then? So the Commission has its own funding and tenders portal, and I put the link there under the portal. And that's where you will find, and I would wait until the 15th because there's a lot of old stuff there now, and the new stuff will all be coming in 2 days. So you'll be able to find by your area the kind of calls that are open. As I mentioned earlier on, there are other pathways for funding as well, such as partners, the EIT vehicles. For the partnerships, for example, the Clean Sky in my case, they are still going to be advertised through the funding portal. So you'll still find the call there. But on their own websites, they would highlight, you know, the plan of when they're going to launch the call, you know, what the stage is that they're at. For cascade funding, if you have a particular sector that you're interested in, I mean, you could either contact your own, you know, the GMIT or ourselves. We could have a quick look to see if there's something out there. And, you know, the other thing, I suppose, with our business, what we try to do is put people on our radar. And then you might get a Twitter message at some hour of the evening when I spot something, or when one of the girls spots something, showing you a call that's open. That's, you know, it's very just putting you in touch with things. That's the way we're trying to do it. And that has had some nice success. And then once you've identified a call that you think is worth going for, and that you may have you know, other businesses or researchers or whatever to go on it with you. Very important, obviously, to read the call texts, to read them really well. That's your Bible, if I may say so, because if you don't take heed of what's in there and what they're exactly asking, you know, you're not going to do well on the application process. And then the next step is to think about the concept for the project you have. What does it look like? How does the different actors interact with each other? How will the different aspects of the proposal be melded together, and how will that produce a result? The ideas have to be well thought through. They have to be beyond the state of the art at the moment. And all of this requires, you know, good collaboration with others and timely preparation. Like we're all very busy, and you can leave things until the last minute, but this is not, EU funding is not the place to do that. It takes weeks and weeks of preparation over, you know, mixed in with your daily job, obviously, but it does take time. And for example, we're already working with consortiums for calls that are going to open now, and they will close in September. So, Now, we're not working on it every day, but we have been asked to start already with some consortiums and, you know, making introductions and getting things going. So that's just normal. It takes 4 or 5 months to put a proper, you know, for one of the bigger calls together. For the cascade funding, you know, I suppose 8 weeks, 6 to 8 weeks in advance of the deadline is still fine. Depending if you have all your partners, or, you know, if you have them kind of lined up already, it's much quicker. So, you know, it just depends on the call and depends on how much writing, you know, everyone is prepared to do. And usually all these applications are done online. So there's an online form, there's an online portal. You have to upload a form, or you have to fill in a form online, depends. And then there would be annexes, maybe financial information, CVs, different, you know, examples of previous work you've done and things like that. So it just depends on the call text and the request. So in EU funding, I suppose there's the 3 there that you see in the first box are really, really important from an EU evaluator's point of view. And I've been on evaluation panels, and you know, we are given certain amounts, scores to be given to each different section in the application form, obviously. And in general, I suppose excellence and impact are getting the highest value in terms of scores. So it's important to spend quite some time on those sections and making sure that you're concise in your writing, and that you're reaching the right level to get your application funded. And then on the implementation section, that is more around the work packages and how you will divide up the work and who will do what and how that all integrates well together, and the budget associated with the project as well. So make sure once you've kind of done the first draft or first 2 drafts that you go back to the call text and you check that it's relevant. What you've written is absolutely answering what the call text asked, because if it isn't, you're on, you know, you're not on the right track, and you're not going to get funded. So the relevance to the call text is really, really, really important. And secondly, the readability. So most of these evaluators will be non-English mother tongue, and the flow of the document and the terms you use, it's important that it reads well. And I often say, give it to somebody who has, you know, nothing to do with your area, but, you know, would be able to give you feedback, because often when you're in the woods, you can't see the trees. And even, you know, at a certain point, us as consultants, we don't see it anymore either, because we've written it and rewritten it so many times. So it's important that it's very readable for a first-time reader, and that's what the evaluators will each be. And they will generally read this alone, on, you know, remotely from each other, and then they come together to decide what the final scores should be on these applications. So obviously plan the submission well. We have had, you know, clients who decided to handle the submission themselves, and you know, it didn't work maybe so well. So never leave it till the hour before the deadline. It's really not a good idea. We always try to submit the day before the deadline, or even earlier if possible, because the day of deadlines in these IT systems, especially at the Commission anyway, can cause problems, and you know, things slowing down, and you're uploading documents and things are going wrong, and you don't need that stress. So look, there's planning to be done, I suppose, is the message, and you'll get there, and with the right organisation and the right approach to it, it's more than possible to be successful. So people ask often, so when will I receive the funding? So if I'm successful, so the deadline is in, you know, May, when will I receive the funding? So it really depends on the size of the grant and the funding stream. For cascade funding, as you could see there in the timetable, so the deadline was in May, and you'd be signing a contract in August. So within 2 or 3 months of applying, generally. They try to turn those around rather quickly, also because there's a smaller number of applications and they're able to handle it much quicker. And with the larger grants, it generally takes, like the Commission has a deadline of 8 months from the time, 8 months or 9 months, sorry, 9 months. So 3 months from the time of the application deadline closing. There has to be the notification to the grantees, I'm getting it mixed up. 5 months from the deadline, they have to be notified, the applicants, whether they're successful or not. And within 3 months of that, the grant has to try to be signed. So in general, within 8 months, you should have a grant signed. But in practice, I suppose we see it's 10 to 12 months before you actually get funding. So money, cash onto the bank account. It can take between 10 and 12 months from the deadline of the call, because by the time the 8 months is up, it takes another 30 days or more for the pre-financing to come through. And then that has to be distributed to you from the coordinator if you're in a bigger consortium. So it all takes time. And that's just the way it works. With the Cascade funding, it is obviously shorter. So it would be much less and under 6 months for sure. But with the larger grants, it is just taking that much longer. But I suppose entities factor that in and they work their cash flow accordingly, if they're successful, of course. So you have to wait for that successful letter first. Just making sure I haven't jumped. Okay. So now I'm going to move on to networking opportunities here. And I suppose people talk about networking and, on a national level, there's lots of events like this one in which you can get information and hopefully meet other people. But for EU funding in particular, I suppose I tried to be specific on that and what would I recommend. So on the national level, Enterprise Ireland, as I said, are the main promoters of our applications into EU funding opportunities. And they're holding a number of events across the year to support different funding application opportunities and trying to explain what the opportunity is, how the funding application works, what the funding rate is, the eligible entities, what kind of costs are eligible, all of that detail is examined in those webinars. And in the past, of course, they would have been physically done both in Dublin and across the country, but everything, as you know, is virtual at the moment. And then there might be coordinator run events. So UCD, for example, UCC, NUIG might hold specific EU funding events as well, such as also obviously the one today, but just, I suppose, on specific opportunities, some of the who would like to coordinate a response, they may run a specific event as well. And they may invite people from the European Commission or other projects that have been successful, other EU partners onto the webinar to show what they brought to the table and how, what they are interested in coordinating in the future or partnering on in the future. So that's one way. And the Enterprise Ireland national contact points are all available. You can get all their details. I have a slide on that, but they can certainly navigate you for your sector. They can navigate you quite well through these funding mechanisms. So at EU level, then, if you spot a project that's already ongoing in your area and you're interested in it, so for example, I would be interested in bioeconomy things and using waste resources from agriculture. And last year there would have been a series of events around grass biorefinery, for example. And some of these events were EU project related events, and you'd hook in there and you start seeing the same names coming back and over and again. So you can meet people through those for sure, and ask questions there, and you know, that is often the seed that is planted to develop into a bigger partnership or a collaboration in the future. All of the calls usually have what they call info days. So there would be an info day, for example, for cluster 4 or cluster 5 or whatever. And again, the Enterprise Ireland website will have details both on the national events, but also on EU events. But if you also go onto the European Commission's website, they will have details of the info days that are coming up for the different calls. And attached to those info days are usually what they call the brokerage events before or after the info day. So that's an opportunity where you register as a business and say, this is us, this is what we deliver, this is what we'd be interested in partnering on, this is our technology, and we think we could be a relevant partner for topic X or Y. And then EU partners, whether they be researchers or research institutes or other private SMEs, would see your profile and look for a matchmaking meeting with you at those events. And again, we would have participated in those and been, you know, invited onto consortiums as well to support them. So they're really, it's an efficient way, but it's also a great way of building up relationships for the future. So, you know, you might be going for this call topic today, but maybe in 18 months, another call topic will come up and they'll say, oh, we met that Irish SME and they had this or that expertise, and you know, that over time you start seeing the same people. In general, there's always obviously new faces as well. And then the EU itself has bigger centralized events that they hold, and in particular I wanted to draw your attention to the Research and Innovation Days that are coming up on the 23rd and 24th of June. There's a link there directly to register for the event, so anyone can register and follow it. Obviously it's on online this year again, and in the past when it would have been physically on in Brussels, you know, again there would be lots of different stands for the different clusters in our example now, where you can get more information, you can meet like-minded companies around the event, and that's a really good way to get networking as well. The different partnerships have events, so the different joint undertakings or EIT, they will all have events as well that you can hook into, and especially now as we're all virtual, certainly that's possible. And then while Enterprise Ireland have our national promotional events, other member states have them as well. So you can always hook into the French one, the Dutch one, and you know, they do provide translation as well. But you can also, it's a good way of meeting other entities that you might want to partner with, or to understand a bit more about how they are approaching these calls. So that's just another possible route for you. And then I wanted to mention the European Enterprise Network. I guess you may know about this already, and the next slide deals with that a little bit more. I suppose it's another means for you to access an EU network, but also funding opportunities and information sharing. So you can see here, I just took a quick screenshot of their website as it is today or yesterday. So they have, for example, an IPR and software webinar tomorrow, but they have a lot of different events, and you can see there's a Meet the Buyer matchmaking event on there on the 15th. So there's lots of different, I suppose, events happening all the time. And if you're looking for opportunities or supports in that sense, the Enterprise Europe Network is certainly a good place to start. And here in Cork, Cork Chamber would be a member of the network from an Irish point of view. I know they have a Donegal base as well, and obviously Enterprise Ireland in Dublin is then holding the lead support for Enterprise Europe Network in Ireland. But it's certainly another avenue that you should maybe explore for different opportunities going forward as well. And I'm on my almost last slide, I think. You'll be glad to hear. Sources of information then. So the main one, as I said, for you in terms of Irish context is the horizoneurope.ie one. And all of the national contact points for the different sectors. So whether it's transport, agriculture, culture, digital security, cybersecurity, whatever it is, you will find them under the Horizon Europe website. And they can certainly direct you to possible opportunities and talk you through opportunities that you may have discovered already. And of course, our national contact points would know national contact points across the member states. So they would be able to say, look, there's a consortium you might want to hook into, like they have contacted me in the past. To ask us to participate in consortia as well. So it just works both ways, I suppose, and it's a very good contact for you. The European Commission's main website is the one I have put up there. You can go in there and then navigate your way to your area of interest. The EIT website, the general one, is there, and then you will also find the different EIT partnerships or EIT area sectors that you're interested in there. All of the partnerships are located at the address there, and as that's evolving, you know, you maybe want to check back in there over time. The EIC information is there, and I wanted to bring your attention as well to this. It's an evolved agency. It used to be INEA, now it's Climate, Infrastructure and Environment Executive Agency, and they have their own funding streams as well that would touch on those areas. So useful to keep an eye on. And the joint undertakings, I seem to have it twice. I didn't realize that, sorry. I added that just earlier on, so I have it twice now on the slide. And then our own website is there as well. So that's about it from my side. Just, I suppose, in terms of our services, we would scope out EU funding opportunities for businesses. But generally, to be honest, people approach us with an opportunity identified and ask us to help them with the proposal writing, which we do. And we also help them with submission. And then we would be involved in some consortia for project management and admin support on live projects where we would have been asked to come in as a partner to help with the project management, because I suppose from my own background, I'd be used to all of that side of things. So they're an overview of what we do, and look, as I said at the beginning, my general aim here is to help people access the funding, know about its existence and what routes are available to them, and also if it's not something, I think, you know, if there's a funding source you're going for and I think it's not worth your time and effort, I'll also say that, because, you know, this does take time and it's not easy. So it's really important to be doing it with a view to success. So I hope that was helpful, Maria. I'm going to stop sharing there.
Great, Liz. Thank you very much. There is a question or two, but just before I see or I just bring in those questions, and it'll be open, guys. If anybody wants to ask a question now, I'll be quiet and you can unmute yourself. But we are going to have follow-on one-to-one sessions with Liz for those people who feel they're at that stage that want to apply. Now we have to kind of have a caveat, as Liz said earlier, like we'd offer it first, I suppose, to our clients of the centres who are at that stage and want to access the funding with Liz. But anyone else outside that is quite interested and would like to have that one-to-one with Liz, what I'd ask you do is you contact the person in each county. So if it's, I see Jeanette there, if you're in Sligo, you contact Jeanette directly. We'll put our emails in the chat box now. You can contact Patsy is also in Donegal, or you can contact Turlock if you're in Galway, or you can contact me if you're in Mayo. And we'll do our best to organise the one-to-ones with Liz for those who want it. One question, Liz, that came up there, for Cascade calls, can you have a partner in the US or India? So I guess outside of Europe, can you have a?
I suppose generally no, but there are EU funding calls, and therefore there may be Cascade calls that would allow that. So it just depends on the call and if that's allowed. So that's one of the first things to check when you find an opportunity is the eligibility criteria. What kind of you know, construction is needed? Is it a single entity? And if it's multiple entities, and if you have, you know, obviously entities in non-EU countries, then check, are they eligible? Because sometimes they are. It just depends on the call.
Great. Now, the floor is open for anybody on the call that wants to unmute themselves and ask a question to Liz. We've five or 10 minutes left.
Yeah, the brains are fried, I think, Maria, at this stage.
Well, there's a lot of information in it, so yeah, I'm sure that people are digesting that. If anybody has a specific question, though, that they want to ask, or put it in the chat box. Yeah, Donegal, somebody asked there, who's the contact? It's Patsy Donoghue. I think Jeanette or Michelle put it up there. So Patsy is the contact. He just isn't on the call today. So.
Hi Liz, I have a question there, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Yes. Hi. So my question is, if you have something that's innovative in Ireland, now that there's competition already, say in the UK, how is that going to work? Like now we do have USPs on the competition, but we're still in the same area that they're in.
I mean, I suppose it sounds like for the EIC accelerator, it wouldn't be a runner because it's not breakthrough enough. It's not first ever. If it's in the UK, it's probably in mainland Europe. I don't know if you've checked that.
Yeah, no, it is. It's in Europe.
Yeah, so the next thing then I would be saying is definitely not accelerator, but I would be looking for the area you're in, if there's anything in the clusters for you. And really, in that case, I would be trying to find researchers who work in your area to see if there is something that you could partner in on, or a cascade fund potentially could be interesting as well.
So say if it's just, I'll tell you, the market's actually surplus food waste. So it's a massive market, like worldwide it's 2.6 trillion. That's the value of it. Now, the competition are only scraping this, so it's still a huge market. So, and on top of that, we do have USPs on them. Is that still going to limit?
Definitely, I think there is opportunities in the bioeconomy and circular economy side of things that the EU is really adamant to support. And for my sins, I'm doing a postgrad in bioeconomy with business as well, so I'm used to the whole food waste thing, and I think there should be opportunities there. Good place to link in with is are you aware of BioOrbic?
No, actually I'm not. No.
So here in Ireland, UCD have a research centre called BioOrbic, which is the Bioeconomy Research Centre.
Yeah.
We also have Circulera, which is an entity coming out of the Irish Manufacturing Research Institute, and they are all about circular and using waste. So there may be something there, and they have their own funding, by the way. But for the researchers and for, you know, is there something you could click into? I would talk to BioOrbic in the first instance and see what they would recommend, because they are trying to help businesses as well going forward into opportunities. So that would be a good place to start, I think.
Super. Thanks very much, Liz.
Okay.
Vincent, you have your hand up there.
Yes, hello. This is for Liz. I'm putting together a consortium with a group over in Germany for mobile biofermenters to convert waste streams from the food industry into high-value microproducts using solid-state fermentation. So we need to build a piece of equipment that will eventually look like a shipping container. So we're trying our best to do this bootstrapping, but maybe if people could give me some pointers there, so we can like to collaborate with other groups and also, you know, naturally a little bit of money to help us build it.
Yeah, so again, I would suggest the same sources that I mentioned to Owen. Definitely have a look at the Cluster 6 Bioeconomy, Agriculture and Bioeconomy programme, but have a look at the Irish Bioeconomy Foundation, both of you as well, because they are trying to, or have you, maybe you've already...
I spoke to Stephen already, yeah.
Okay,
yeah,
okay,
yeah,
good,
yeah,
okay. So like they have EU projects ongoing already, Vincent, and they may know of cascade funding or other streams. So that's your way in. And then keep an eye on the BBI brokerage events. So BBI is the bio-based industries, I'm sure you know of it, bio-based industries brokerage events as well, because that could be another pathway in. But do look up, just in general, Google what's happening at EU level for your particular technology in your area and all that, and see is there any EU projects on it already that they may be looking to follow up, or you could look for partners within it or whatever.
Yeah. We're hopefully going to apply for an EIT's FTSE bid accelerator program. So
great.
Let's get us on there.
Yeah.
Get some traction, hopefully.
What's your business name, Vincent?
Well, this is a new company that I'm helping put together. So my business is Accurate Technology. We're in this space, but this is a new consortium we're trying to put together.
Right. Okay. Good stuff.
Great. Is anybody else want to ask a question, or also? Yeah, I come to one thing. Just Sharon White. I don't know if Sharon's on the call. She might just put the names of the different colleges as well. If she's, I know she was on the call. Just it'd be handy information to have. Sorry, Liz. Yeah, do you want to say something there?
No, I'm okay. Sharon is still there, I think.
If there's anybody else, sorry, I'm going to just mute myself again. So if anybody wants to ask a question, go ahead. And if not, what we can do, guys, is we leave it open, and you can contact. We have all our contact details as well here, so you can contact myself, Turlock, Jeanette, or Patsy if you want to meet with Liz, particularly on the one-to-ones. You could do that, because sometimes questions are very specific anyway in these areas. So, so if there's no other